Good afternoon, everybody. So welcome back to our 3-day series. As we've talked about before, we're doing some stretches and some movements that you can do at home to make sure that we're trying to maintain the results we've already had with chiropractic care, to prevent problems getting worse, and to some extent to help to treat anything that may come up, especially as people are working from home, spending more time sitting and maybe not in the most comfortable or ergonomic position that they may be in if they were normally at their office or at their desk. On the first 2 days, on the first day we were of course going through some movements and mobilizations for the neck and for the spine. Then on the second day we were talking about some stretches. These were going to be more for the upper part of the body, so working through the shoulders, working through the chest, and of course working through the upper back with that stretch where you're leaning against the wall. Today, as I've talked about before, we're going to be looking more at the lower body. So when we're sitting, especially if we're sitting more for our work, whether it's computer work or other sedentary work, we're going to have more of a time where there's going to be an angle at the hips themselves. So instead of say being nice and straight, there's going to be this angle kind of like this. What this means is those muscles on the front of your legs, they're going to start to get essentially slightly shorter when you're in this position. Over time, this is something that's going to of course progressively lead to a tightening of that muscle. You know, if you're doing something like exercise, of course the muscles get longer and shorter as you're doing movements like running or jumping. However, these are things that are happening progressively and it's changing all the time. It's going back to being longer and shorter. However, if you're doing this on a continual basis, such as if you're sitting for long periods of time, this means that those muscles are going to get more and more contracted. Much like yesterday, how we talked about sitting will lead the posture to come more forward and shorten that chest muscle, the same thing is going to be happening for your legs. Another area that's going to be affected when you're sitting is going to be some level of shortening and also discomfort happening in one of the muscles we find in the buttocks, and this is a small one called the piriformis. So there's a stretch we're going to be doing for that today, and then as an additional bonus, I know a lot of people talk about tight hamstrings. We're going to avoid the hamstrings. We're actually going to be talking about a tightness that we find instead more in the calf muscles themselves, as this can be more of a precursor to what happens in the hamstrings. So let's get started first with the stretch that we talked about for the quads. And like I said, when we're sitting more, we're going to have this shortening of those muscles, so we need to lengthen those muscles out. That's what stretching really is. It's taking a muscle that's a bit too short and lengthening it out, and that helps to free up some of those knots and adhesions that build up in those muscles. So we'll bring things a little bit closer. So there's 2 ways we're going to go through this for today. Number one, I'll put that a bit lower down there, is again I have my trusty yoga mat here. It's just bringing the leg up, so making sure again we have 90-degree angles at your knee, at the hip, and the other hip we want this to be going straight down. And then all we're going to be doing is making sure that the foot is flat there. We don't want it to be coming up like that. Instead we want to have the foot nice and flat, and we're just going to be leaning more into it. Again, making sure that the movement is not coming from your lower back. You're not leaning back like this. We're keeping that nice and tight, so making sure this stays stable and moving forward. And that's building more of a stretch into this area. So this is something you can use as a starter exercise. We can start on this one, say again, as we talked about before, starting at 1 minute and trying to build our way up to potentially around 4 minutes. And we're going to be doing that on both sides, even if there's only tension or symptoms on one side. So again, just from here, body is looking straight forward, keeping there and bringing it forward. Not from the back, just from the hip itself, and you should feel a nice stretch coming down the front of the leg. The other variation we're going to be doing, I'm going to angle this up just a little bit, is going to be using a more of a raised surface. So I've got a side table here. All I'm going to be doing is have my foot on top, again, bringing the leg forward and coming up here. From here, again, we're holding this position. Again, we're not arching from the back, keeping that nice and constant. Any stretch we have is either going to come forward from here or by actually coming further back, tensing those buttock muscles, so that creates more of a deep stretch here. Variating between these two, coming forward will stretch more of what's happening at the top, coming further back, we'll start to stretch more of what's happening here. And of course, at some level, trying to combine both by bringing this leg a bit further back, keeping nice and tight close to here. So not necessarily touching all the way to your foot, but keeping tight towards it and making sure then that we're leaning slightly forward and then a nice stretch all the way through. Again, starting with 1 minute, doing this on both sides and trying to progressively work our way up to longer points of even up to 3 or 4 minutes. As I explained before, one of the reasons that we do this longer period of time is because it's what we need to have for what we call creep. So it's not just about stretching the muscle so it feels a bit better, but it actually functions much better as well. When the muscle is progressively getting longer, it means that those times when you're spending at the desk and spending in sitting positions, they're going to now be counteracted and reversed to some extent. If you do it for 10 seconds or even 30 seconds, to be honest, symptomatically it may help, but it will make no change in the body. We want to make sure we're actually making change in the body, not just helping for the 10 seconds where it feels a bit better at the time. So like I said, doing this on both sides, and then we're going to move forward to the next exercise, the next stretch, which is going to be more for the piriformis, which is a small muscle going along the glutes. So I'm going to angle this a little further down again. So from here, what you can do is I have the legs out in front like this, and we're going to be stretching this side. This side is my left side. So I'm going to bring this leg across here, have the arms behind, want the body nice and straight up. We don't want to be leaning forward and hurting our posture, no slouching, nice and straight, and then just bringing the hands slightly closer as we can. So the idea is try and get your belly button to come closer to here. Now you may find that this is the angle or this amount of, say, movement of the legs as much as you can do. However, when it starts to get too easy, the easier we're going to do this, the way we can progress it, is to bring this leg further up. As it comes closer, you're going to start to feel more of a stretch coming through here in the buttocks. You're going to start to feel even maybe a little bit around the knee as well, making sure that the knee is not coming up towards the body. We're keeping it nice and square with the body. So whether it's lower down here or even way up here, we're keeping it there. We're not letting that knee collapse into the body. And again, in this position, holding first for a minute, and then trying to work our way up to maybe 2, 3, or even potentially 4 minutes. Ideally 2 is going to be where you're going to be making more change. And again, doing this on both sides, so we can start again nice and simple, and then as things are getting easier, we start to progress our way up. We're going to feel a nice stretch coming through there. One of the things we do see with a lot of people is they may do a stretch which looks something like this, where maybe they have their leg coming forward, this one comes back, in fact that's kind of in the way there, put that out, coming down from there and then stretching forward. However, one of the problems with this is that number one, it can be difficult if you don't have the flexibility, and number two, it can actually put a lot more pressure onto your lower back because you are stressing those joints, especially if you're not doing it completely correctly. And of course, since this is at home, this is more of a chance. This is a chance where there can be more problems happening and people may end up slouching over their own posture and causing more damage than they should. Again, making sure that you do feel it in that glute area across the piriformis, not feeling it in your back, your neck, or anywhere else, because that would be an indicator it is the wrong place, and then maybe you just stop doing this exercise. So as I talked about, there are going to be 3 main stretches today. So we've gone through one for the quads, one for the piriformis, and now we're going to go through one for the calves. Again, a lot of people stretch their hamstrings. A lot of people stretch their hamstrings and they've been sitting for long periods of time because that's where the symptoms are. However, it is not about always following those symptoms. In the same way that if you go to see a cardiologist and you have symptoms in, say, your legs, you may have breathing difficulty, you may have all of these different symptoms, the cardiologist won't give you a leg massage and they're not going to give you caffeine pills for your tiredness, they're going to deal with your heart, which is the problem. And that's one of the main tenets that should be for all healthcare, going for the cause of a problem rather than just focusing on the symptoms. So even though you may have this tension, this feeling going on in the hamstrings, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the problem. One thing that can happen commonly is when people are sitting for long periods of time, they start to tighten the calves. They start to raise their feet up off the floor. They start to then have more of a shortening of that muscle at the back of the lower leg, which will then start to cause more tension and of course starts to affect the rest of the leg as well. All of that shortens what we call the posterior chain, which means that people are more inflexible. So one thing people commonly do, I see all the time, they try to touch their toes and they say they can't do it, it's all because of hamstrings. That's kind of the equivalent of saying, I have a problem with my house, it can only be the walls. I'm not saying that it could be the foundation, the floors, the ceilings, or anything else. There can be other aspects to this, and a common part, usually, especially with people who sit a lot, is going to be those calves. So an easy stretch we can do, instead of using a wall, which again a lot of people do, I prefer personally to use a step. A wall is something where you can't really use your body weight quite as efficiently, and you're going to have to really force into it, which can be quite difficult for most of us, to be honest, especially if it's uncomfortable. So what I would recommend instead is trying to find a step. So if you have, of course, wherever you live, maybe some stairs. If you're in an apartment, a condo, HDB, going and finding some common steps, you can use that. Of course, I don't have that in my room here, so what I will be using is a small block that we use for yoga. So what we can see just through here, you can see this small block for yoga. And what we're going to be doing from here, we're going to start first by working on that left side. We're going to have me standing on this, down here I have my hand, and I'm resting it against this wall next to me. All I'm doing is letting the body just hang down. And then also when you're here, trying to play with it a little bit. So figuring out if you go a bit left, a bit right, if you turn your foot in, turn your foot out. Try not to let the knee collapse inwards. Try to make sure that leg stays straight, and try to be a little bit more on the outside of the foot there. And again, letting the body just drop down, especially if you are doing this on stairs. I would recommend trying to wear some shoes because then it won't press as much on the bottom of the foot, especially for people who may have plantar fasciitis. And with the other foot, you can either let it hang, you can even let it rest on here and maybe add a little bit more pressure as well. Make sure you're really feeling a deep stretch down that back of the leg. And then again, if it's hurting too much or it feels like it's not right, either consult with myself or another practitioner instead. Holding this for one minute and then trying to work your way up again to 2, 3, or even 4 minutes and making sure you are doing both sides. What may help as well is that, say from here, now I'm actually quite close to the wall, so this is changing the angles of my leg. So what I would do is very simply switch. Make sure that leg is further out as it should be, so you're getting the right amount of stretch and you're not going to be doing any damage at the same time. Okay, so that's all of the stretches that we have for today. That is the end of our 3-part series, so please make sure that you try these at home. If you want to, you can also share these with people so that they can do this. You know, a lot of people are going to be home right now. This is literally millions of people working from home or stuck at home. So if you can share this with other people, this gives them a chance that they can try to offset some of these symptoms, at least before they're able to go in and see practitioners such as chiropractors, physiotherapists, TCM, or osteopaths. If you have any questions, of course, you can always give me a call or a WhatsApp on 8438-9550, or you can email help@vitalitychiropracticcenters.com. You can also comment below this video, and I'll make sure that I do my best to get back and to reply to all comments. Again, if you want to see the other videos, they're still available on our page, and I'm also going to be sending this around to all of the patients on our current list so that you all have access to this if you've not had a chance to get onto the live, or maybe they're not even on Facebook as well. Again, if you have any questions, you can always get back to us. And if you would like to book an online consultation, we are taking teleconsultations at the moment, where we'll be able to go through a full history, and then we can refer out afterwards for x-rays if needed. And then when we open up again after we've had this circuit breaker, that's when we'll be able to do, of course, any physical tests and treatment if it is something that's required. That's something you can find in the comments, and also is going to be for this video in the actual description, so a link where that can all be booked. And if you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, stay safe and take care of each other.